Stand by. Shooter ready.
Stand by.
Right. Welcome back to another PRS podcast, and this one is heavy duty. We have 5 of us here tonight, and this is the better. Well, it's a good segment of the PRS scoring committee that we commissioned. Actually, probably 6 months ago, we started talking about it, and these guys have done a lot of work for us. Let's do some introductions, and then we'll talk about the committee and some of the things that we wanted to take a look at. So first off, let's start with Mr. Rusty Ulmer. You want to introduce yourself, buddy?
Hey, my name's Rusty Ulmer. I'm from Arizona. I've been competing in the PRS for about 10 years now. I don't know what else you want to know about me.
Anything notable? There's nothing notable about Rusty
Nothing
Ulmer?
notable about me, no.
Well,
No.
you got 300 points this year in the PRS. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's pretty noticeable. That's a new one for me. So yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Next, Matt Sabaka.
Yeah, Matt Sabatka. I don't have 3 wins this year, not even 3 in my career, but just 1 a year ago. So got to be outdone by both Chris and Rusty in the room today. But I also co-match direct for the Southern Iowa Showdown, the Shields match in Iowa. We had a qualifier match this year, great turnout, and maybe we'll have a world qualifier next year. Who knows? We'll see.
There you go.
Also, kind of got engaged with Ken early on and in the chair, I guess, of this committee, and get a great group of people here to help us sort through all the hurdles and find a better solution for the PRS. So I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Chris Katalik.
Absolutely. Yeah. Chris Katalik. I'm out of Texas. I've been competing in the PRS now for 5 or 6 years, I think. Most notable is that that span of time also is the same gap between my first and my second win in the PRS, actually. So it's a bit of a dubious honor, let's be honest. But I'm glad to set records, break records, if you will, and I'm glad that one's a little bit behind me. So anyway,
Yeah, I haven't formally talked to Clay Blackadder yet, but I know he knows you probably right to the day and the minute, whatever. But yeah, your span of 4 years, 11 months between wins,
something
has to be the longest span any PRS champions had. So
I think so.
Yeah,
I saw
congrats.
Francis posted on Facebook about the match and everything else, and he called out the fact that it was a 61 match drought between wins. So thanks, Francis, by the way. Thanks for calling me out on that. I appreciate it. Gotcha.
I'm going to do a little bit of math here. 61 times, let's say the average price of a match is 200. Yeah, it's like $18,000 in match fees between wins.
Wow.
That's a bit. That doesn't include AG Cups and finales and everything else. Yeah, that's a lot. That's
an investment for a second win.
Yes.
All right. Sheldon Nalos, introduce yourself here, buddy.
Yeah, Sheldon Nalos, based in Washington State. Been competing in the PRS for knocking on 10 years now. Looked at my profile page, and I'm getting close to 100 matches. I think I got 5 to go.
That's cool.
Notable shooting stuff. I won the regional series and won one Pro Series match years ago. So my plan is to never win a second one and beat Chris's record.
Good luck with that.
And then the only other thing I'm known for is I do a spreadsheet looking at PRS data and stats at the end of the year, every year. So some folks may have seen that in the past.
That's hugely notable, right? Usually publish that. Let's see if the finale is in like November. It seems like you publish that first week of December or something like that. A few weeks later, and that's looking at all the matches and the top 300-400 shooters, right, in the series.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of everybody's average season and how matches scores went, and kind of a nice retrospective.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. We appreciate that. I mean, I think everybody that takes this sport seriously, out of the top top 500 guys or whatever, like they get that. They're like, oh my gosh, cool. Like, what a data, analysis that you pull together. So thank you. Yep.
That too.
All right. Matt Sabaka, you actually, were the first person to talk to me about, well, maybe not the first. You're the first person to actually present data to me, right? With what you were thinking, which I get a lot of people that, will come to me with suggestions and say like, hey, you know what? PRS should really do this. Like, okay. That's an interesting thing to consider, or, maybe it solves a problem or something like that. But, it's not very often that somebody comes to me and says, hey, we should take a look at something, in this case, scoring system. And by the way, I have data to show that, like we could go in a couple different directions, and here's how it changes, right? Which I think is the most respectful thing, when I was presented with that. And I think actually last year that I heard about this, the scoring system needs to be looked at or addressed or something. And it was probably mid-August last year. I had 4 or 5 people address that with me. And I think it's because Nick Adarzi had won like 5 matches and had 300 points. And then there was like 3 or 4 more guys, that also had won, repeatedly won and had 300 points. So it was looking like the whole squad won going into the finale was going to have 300 points each, right? And that was it. It's not how it necessarily shook out, but I think we had more 300s last year at the finale, time of the finale, than any other match or any other season. This year, I know Rusty, right? Jeff Geary. Who am I missing?
Ryan Beck.
Ryan Beck. You're right. Yeah, 3 guys, right, with 300s, and then there's several with 295 plus, but which precipitated a lot of the conversations. And then I'm going to fast forward here to probably an hour and 20 minutes down the road when we get to the end of this podcast. The solutions that we're going to suggest actually don't, well, they may or may not affect the outcome of where people place, but it probably will affect their scores more, right? But with that being said, Matt came to me with data, and then we set out on a project. Do you want to first explain the entire team, who all we had that contributed to this, and then some of the path that we went down?
Yeah, it's important to note that, we have a portion of the team here. Other people, Joe Thielen, one of the best guys at the PRS, Team Hornady, great shooter. He's been involved all along the way. Miles Neville, also from the Hornady team. So the 3 of us kind of represent the Midwest. You have Rusty in the Southwest, Chris in the South. And we have Ken Sanowski in the Northeast. And then that was really the bulk of the team. Matt Steiner was at every. Talk about PRS leadership. So you have Ken Wheeler and Matt Steiner, and Matt was involved in every meeting. Lots of input. We had a very collaborative approach to it, and I think we came out with some good ideas or good recommendations, safe recommendations too. I guess it all started for me looking at this, or why I put the data together was really not because of all the top shooters getting 300, but there's the same effect. You saw more shooters getting 300 points. You also saw that guy in 150th place qualifying for the finale. You saw that average season score raise from 88 to 90 to 92, and it became harder and harder to get those high averages if you were in different regions of the U.S. So my motivation was to really create a more normalized system that allowed the best shooters, regardless of where they existed and what matches they chose to shoot, it allowed them to get that first round invite, because for so many more people, that's their goal. There's obviously 20 or 30 guys, maybe 50 that are going for a bullet, but there's probably 300-400 that are just trying to get to that finale. And it's important, I guess, when you consider the scoring system, and because that's what determines it. So at the end of the day, so I started putting data together and kind of made some cool automated models, and like you said, showed them to you, and the rest kind of took off.
Yeah, it's this is probably, I mean, it's a large, I don't really want to call it an issue. It's a large situation that we're dealing with here, and it's probably the biggest one as yeah, I've faced as the director of the PRS, and it's been there since very like my first match, and the first match as the director, and I went to the match. And my first Texas match was the one that Austin Bushman cleaned, right? And I was there. I shot the same match. I did not clean the match. It was significantly more difficult for me than it was for him. But there was a lot of conversation generated from that match, and like people in Texas earning points, and it's not always that way, right? Like Prentice has hosted a match that was clean, and he hosted another match where like Nathan Tungate, skull drug everybody and won by like 7 or 8 impacts, and it wasn't, so like there's matches of varying difficulty all over the US. There's the nut crusher that gets 80 shooters at, because not everybody wants to just go out and have it be challenged in that way, right? And if you go to that match, somebody's likely to run away with it. And if you go to a Texas match or a K&M match or Arkansas, or some of these that typically, or statistically speaking, Sheldon, right, that have a little bit more compact top half, we'll say, right, or the scores are a little bit more condensed towards the top. So I mean, that's one of the situations we're trying to address here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at one of the key metrics that we looked at, there was the percentage of shooters that got 90 points at each match. It's not a telltale. It doesn't tell, the full story, but it's a really good indicator. If I'm a, mid-pack shooter and I go to that match, my chances of getting a finale qualifying score are much higher. And there's matches, when you look across the board, there's matches that are complete outliers on both sides of that.
Mhm.
Very difficult to qualify for the finale when you shoot, the Hornady PRC, the Alpha Munitions Nut Crusher, and then maybe like a close
RG.
coverage. Yep.
Yeah, or Clay's match. Yeah, exactly.
And they're great matches. So
Yeah, they're fun. I've not shot the Alpha Munitions Nut Crusher yet, but I love the Hornady PRC, and I love Clay's match. I've shot both of those a couple times now, and the challenge is awesome. But just a note, this podcast will go in the blog post on the PRS website, as well as we'll put the executive summary out there, which has that chart that you're talking about, Matt, where we looked at matches from the 2024 season, and the percentage of folks that got 90 points or better, right? So that chart is in there. So everybody who's listening to this and is trying to visualize that, go over that chart is pretty telling. So that'll be in the executive summary. All right. So I guess with that, Sheldon, do you wanna explain some of the different considerations we had, or different calculations and things that paths that we went down as a committee to try to address this?
Absolutely. So one of the things that, would be easy to do is to like point fingers at matches and say, oh, that's a meatball match. We're doing something to go after that. And I think the thing we did that was positive in the scoring committee, we said, well, let's look at systems and say, what gets the right shooters to the finale with the right score. So, I mean, I think everybody could agree that really this whole game is about, figuring out who's the best, getting those people to the finale, and finding out, where we all stack up. And so when we started to run data and run numbers, we were really looking at what system does the best job of predicting who gets to the finale and who shows up at the finale and shoots well. So one of the ways we tackled that is we took the whole of the 2024 season and ran like scenarios saying, okay, if the scoring system had been this with, X number of matches and X number of points for placement, X number of points for percentage of winner, how would it have turned out? And we looked at people and said, okay, if you're getting invited to the finale and you came in at 120th place and you shot the finale, where did you land? Did you land at 120th place in the finale, or did you go a lot higher or a lot lower? And so we use that data in aggregate to go, okay, which system is the best system? And I think the two big takeaways we saw were that if you had a percentage of winner system, what we're using right now, there's some volatility. When you go to the finale, you see some folks who came in ranked really high and they don't shoot well. And you see some folks coming in not ranked as high and they shoot really well. They show up great at the finale. And as a whole, that system was pretty volatile. A lot of people going up and down from where they came in. When we looked at a hybrid scoring system, taking percentage of winner and placement, that was a lot better of a predictor as to who showed up at the finale and performed the best. So we were looking at those elements, and then we were also looking at the number of matches to see, does that affect how predictive our system is of getting the right people to the finale and getting them the right amount of points going into the finale.
To expand on that, so Sheldon talked about the predicting, your placement at the end of the season, and then how that would, correlate to your position after you shot the finale. And we actually came up with a model or two that very, very accurate at doing that. I mean, there was Sheldon probably your season rank would end up within, say, 5 places of your your post finale score, sort of accurate. But that doesn't actually mean that's the right scoring system, because when we talk about average season score being included, with a fourth match is kind of what I'm referring to. When you include 4 matches and your fourth score is the average score that you shot through the season, you take all 7 matches you shot, and that averages out to a 96. That's your fourth score. That ended up being a very, very accurate indicator, predictor of where you would end up. And to Sheldon's point, we look for those trends, but at the same time, going with the scoring system that was the most predictive is maybe not the best choice when you factor in the reality or the people side of it, and how shooters will approach matches and pick what they're going to shoot. So there is a balance to it where you want this great prediction aspect, but you have to play the human side, and that's where this got tricky.
You don't want to make it so complicated that the average shooter doesn't know what their score is or where they stand in the standings or how to figure out what's happening with the scores.
Right. And the committee also looked at different multipliers for the finales, right? So that, because you would hate to put somebody in a position, right, or a shooter in a position where they, say, finish the regular season in 50th place. They only shot 4 matches, but the tail end of their season really opened up, and they're able to go train, shoot a lot more regionals or something, really be able to go for it at the finale, right? We don't want this to just be like, well, where everybody shot in a regular season, that's just how you're going to end up, that's not the case either. So the committee did take a look at, what that multiplier should be, right, guys?
Absolutely. Yeah, we ran scenarios for, is the finale one equal to a regular season match? Is it 1.5 times? Is it 2 times like it currently is? And all told, we probably ran 20 or so different scoring scenarios of combinations of different options.
Mm-hmm.
We did put out a poll too to some of the top shooters. I'm going to say the top 30 shooters from 2024. We left out some context intentionally with that, just to get a kind of off the cuff answer for what did they want, not what. So back to that human factor, we know what the data tells us, but what do the shooters actually want? And that was pretty conclusive. I think it was 75% of the responses came back with leave it at 2.
And Matt, to your point, that was kind of part of some of what in the value that we had within the committee. We've got shooters from all over the country, different skill levels, experience levels, everything else. And that was something that, as we were looking to see how the scoring system was going to affect not just call it the top 10 shooters, not the mid pack, call it the back. We wanted to try to find something that was going to solve some of the challenges and address what we perceive to be challenges, or maybe areas where we can improve across the entire spectrum of essentially everybody that was going to get invited to the finale or was vying for an invite to the finale. not just one segment in that. So yeah, that was important. Like you said, is how do we develop a scoring system that addresses the Jeff Gary scenario where you don't win 3 matches, but yet you end up with a 300, right?
Yeah, and I think
And
just to remind everybody, in 2024, if Gary went into the finale, he had 1 win, right? But he had 3 ties prior to
3
that.
ties. Yeah.
I think he had 3 ties, so he had 300 points, and then he got a win at the end of the season. It was going into the finale, and man, I've never won a Pro Series match. I don't know what it takes. I don't have, I guess, what it takes. But I can imagine being in that position and having the same end of season score as somebody who got there via ties, right? Like that could be problematic, right?
So he won that Georgia match, didn't he? Real late. So
Which
we
was
almost
qualifier,
Yeah.
I believe. Yep.
Yeah, it
we
was.
almost had the ultimate scenario where he goes in, without winning a match with max points. And if he would have tied for the win, maybe at the finale, he lost the tiebreaker. He maxes out, 500 points and never actually wins a match. So, that takes a great shooting and certainly would be deserving. 4 second places is hard to beat, but
Well, he made up for that this year, I think,
He
with
did.
He
5
did.
wins
He
in a
did.
row.
Well,
He
but
won
and
5
that's,
out of 7.
yeah, but okay, so that's bringing us up to the next point too, right? And first, let me just say that I thought I was really good at getting second. Jeff Gary took second place to a whole new level by getting
He did.
300 points by second places. But that being said, but you're exactly right, and that was the fact you look at what Jeff Gary's done this season, and that was something else that we considered, right? Does a guy that has won 6 matches on the season go into the finale with the exact same number of points as the guy that won 3 matches in the season? And how do you create some sort of separation there? And so that kind of goes into kind of what I was mentioning a minute ago. We wanted to make sure that we kind of create maybe a little bit of separation. You kind of touched on this earlier. To be in squad 1 last year, you needed 299 points. Not taking anything away from any of the guys that accomplished that, because I didn't. And it was a great accomplishment. But if you're going in and you're in squad 1, I mean, everybody's separated by less than a point, and there's no separation. If you're Jeff Gary this season, you've won 6 matches, you're on the exact same. You're technically, under the current scoring system, in the exact same scenario as the guy who got second place, tied for the win on 3 other matches. And there's a different skill gap there. So we wanted to kind of address that. I guess I'm kind of just speaking to some of the things that we considered as to what we thought might need to be changed at the different levels of the game. And again, at the top, it's a little bit different than what we looked at as kind of the mid pack, right? The middle segment of the shooters when it comes to how do we address regional differences? How do we address some of the advantages you have if you maybe shoot on the East Coast and percentages are higher versus West Coast. So anyways, just mentioning that for conversation.
Yeah. What are some of the, let's get into the specifics here, right? Like what are some of the considerations regarding that? Like I remember one of the things we talked about was like, bonus points for a win, right? Up to so many and that type of thing, right? Like I guess go through and try to explain what some of those things that were considered.
Guys, jump in. I remember that was one of the things that we had talked about. We talked about, look, if you get to 300, how do you reward the guy or gal that has won more than 3 matches in the season? Because that's a hell of an accomplishment. I think, and Sheldon, correct me if I'm wrong, we went back and started looking at results going back for years and years and years to see how many, what was the most number of wins in a single season? And I think we ended up with somewhere around 4 or 5.
Back in 19, I think, maybe.
Yeah, and that was the most that anybody had achieved. And even then, you have to go back and look if that win was actually a true win or was it a tie and whatnot, right? And we know Jeff at 6 wins outright has set a new record this season, and it's a huge shout out to him. But to that point, we just we just had to kind of go back and look at some of that data and see what was, how do you reward the person that does more than 3 wins in a season? Because it's rare. right now we have 3 people, one of which is on this call right now. We have 3 people that have done that this season that have won 3 or more matches. It's very rare. But for the person that does more than 3, it's extremely rare. I guess that's kind of the point. So how do we reward that? Do we do a bonus point? I don't know. Matt, if you want to, feel free to elaborate on that. I know you
Yeah,
help with a lot of that.
So what you described it really well, Chris. At the end, so we were considering adding that bonus point after you won 3 matches. So your Nick Godarzi last year with his 4th win, and he kind of quit shooting a little bit because he kind of dominated that region, and maybe there's other pieces of it. But at the end of the day, season long dominance should be rewarded. To your point, how often does season long dominance like that happen? We ended up determining maybe 1 or 2, 3 other times max. It ended up being a rare enough occurrence that we felt it probably didn't have to be included in this rollout of the scoring system change. Now, as more matches are shot, and that's part of this whole endeavor as the sport grows, as you go, compared to a business, and you start off with 2 or 3 people, you do things differently. You get to 15, then you get to 100, you get to 4,000. The business evolves, the sport evolves. We go from 20 matches a year to 50 matches a year and beyond. So more changes will have to come, but with what we saw in the data, it didn't happen enough that we felt it needed to be rewarded yet. And then here we are looking back or looking at 25, and we see the opportunity for it to happen 2 or 3 times. So
I think when we first started looking at it, it was right before Gary had won 3. And then we said, well, it doesn't happen very often. Then all of a sudden he wins 4. And then the next week he wins 5. And now he's like, well, okay, maybe there is a reason to do that.
yeah. There was also the argument against it of the whole bonus point, culture, the giveaway thing. For me, I couldn't get on board with that because of you earn it. That's an earned point. I mean, it's not easy to win a match, let alone 4. But who knows where that'll go in the future.
I think it all kind of gets to like the core issue of what we were looking at when we were building out the scoring system is the idea, there's how many plates you hit, how many targets you hit, and then there's the idea of who did you beat when you showed up. And that was sort of the cause of a lot of the ties and the scoring discussion we've been having, but it also plays out a lot in just, regular matches. Like if you show up and you place dead mid pack at 50%, that's, an average performance. Good for you for shooting. But if you scored really high and got a 90-point score out of it, maybe it didn't reflect, who you were competing against and how you stacked up against the field. So that was sort of part of the element that led us to thinking about, hybrid scoring, the idea where you take the percentage of winner score and combine it with, how did you stack up against your peers, and use those 2 together to make a final score that, reflects how you shot overall. Does somebody want to walk through sort of where we landed for what hybrid is and how you figure it out?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in. I've been running the scoring for the USPRA for a while, and it uses a 50-50 scoring that you're talking about. And so I say I ran it. I just calculate points on the back end. That's all. When the leaderboard is posted, it's just because of work that I've done. But the point being is that I've run those calculations a lot based upon it's a combination of your hit percentage and your placement percentage, just to kind of explain it to everybody else. So we take 50% of your score comes from your hit percentage, which is our traditional scoring method right now, and it's combined with your placement percentage, and that's a percentage of where you finish in the match. Obviously, it's affected by the number of people in the score. So we blend the 2 numbers together, we average them, and that becomes your actual score. So in the case of, again, we keep picking on Jeff Gary in this situation, in which he tied for the win in 3 different matches. In each one of those situations, his score would be a combination of 100% for hit percentage, because he hit as many targets as the top shooter, but he would get second place in the match because that's actually his placement. So he would not, in fact, get 100 for that match. He would get a 99 or 99.5, depending on how many shooters actually showed up. So there would actually be a very, very slight change in his score and outcome in that match, but he would not be at 300 points. And so that was kind of that was the thought process behind the 50-50 scoring. I think I think that scoring's been used in some other organizations, but yeah, that's something I'm familiar with.
It's actually been used in the PRS for one of the years. I guess Sheldon, you were probably the only guy shooting Pro Series matches back then, but it was 2016, 2017, that era. In fact, I went back. I actually I talked to Jonathan Berry about this, right? And he's like, "Oh yeah, we tried this, and it worked for about a year, or it was in place for about a year." And I don't, we are in a much different position today with the organization and the sport and how many shooters we have and how many matches we have and all that. So, I believe this is different. And I'm hoping that through means of this podcast and putting out the executive summary and the results and being really try to be as transparent as possible and everything that we did and why the committee chose what they did, that hopefully there's some more maybe some more understanding and reasoning behind making the move and hopefully adoption, right? Which is the next step. So the executive summary is going to go out. Like I said, it's in the blog post. That's going to also go to the match director committee, and the match director committee is made up of all of the Pro Series match directors, and they will have conversation and vote on it. And if there's a strong enough vote, then it gets brought in for the 2026 season. So that's sort of the process here, I guess. Yeah.
Ken, let's talk about so we've our recommendation as a group, if you kind of fast forward to what we liked, it was the 50-fit hybrid. That's what we've been talking about. Well, let's talk about what other things does it fix? What are the when we think about match in the West Coast, a low attended match in the West Coast versus a high attended match in the South. Let's talk about that. I don't know who wants to take that one.
I don't mind jumping in just a little bit. I think there's a lot of different examples, and Matt, I'm glad you brought that up because it was something to be considered. And I think we kind of touched on it earlier. Let's just say historically matches, in the West typically have a lot higher score differential separation between the leaders, between first and let's say the mid pack. I went to Nut Crusher a few years ago. Morgan, I think, won by like 20 points. There was a huge separation. So if you went to that match under the current scoring model, hoping to score some points, even if you finished in second place, he ruined it. He busted the curve for everybody. Mm-hmm. Kudos to Morgan for doing it. He shot great. I was there. I didn't get any points. Versus
which let's talk about the effects of that, right? There are shooters in the community that their goal is to make the finale, and they're going to travel to matches that allow them to accomplish their goal, right?
Exactly.
There's also shooters out there, and I hope, and I think this is a majority of. I hope this is a majority of the population because that's how I think of matches. But I want to go I want to shoot the Nut Crusher at some point, right? It hasn't been high on my list, but I want to shoot matches. Thank you for the experience, right?
It's a great match. Paul puts on a great match. It's phenomenal. I really enjoy it. It kicks my ass every time.
Yeah, and I still want to qualify for the finale, right? But I also want to try different matches out, right? And it does kind of suck to think, if I go to that match, well, don't count on using this one for the finale. I could shoot lights out, but I'm not keeping up with Morgan King. I could finish third in that match, have the best match I've ever shot. But on paper, it's a wasted weekend, right? And I get it. This stuff's expensive. It takes a good amount of time and money to be able to go to attend something. And if that match has that reputation, then it's probably going to be a lower attended match year in, year out. And when we're trying to grow the sport across the country, You know, do we? What we could do from an organizational standpoint is put out a structured course of fire or a structured,
Forget size, whatever.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Standard. Yeah. But
standard, yeah, put out a standard that everybody needs to adhere to. But I don't think anybody wants to shoot that, and that's not going to grow the sport, and it's going to take away from the creativity that the match directors put into it, right? So,
that's exactly right.
you know, how do we still let match directors do what they want to do, but you know, within some bounds, right? Obviously, like if this, you know, you can't get too crazy because then people are just not going to attend those matches, and we're going to get a bunch of feedback as an organization. But you know, how can we allow the freedom for match directors to do what they want to do, but not necessarily penalize the shooters because of weather, you know, of maybe some factors completely out of their control, that they went to a match and, you know, one guy runs away with it, you know?
Right. So what's the point? I mean, at the end of the day, and I'm not gonna oversimplify it, but we're playing a game in which the goal is to try to get as many points as you can, almost regardless of your skill set. Right? You have a finite. You have a no. I
Yeah,
no. I know.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
I know what
funny,
you're
but
saying. I know what you're saying.
you have
Yeah.
a look. I have a finite, amount of skill, and I need to take that and try to then go score as many points as I can. Statistically speaking, and Sheldon can help us with this. If you look at his spreadsheets, he will tell you statistically if you are limited on the number of matches you can shoot on a given season, where you should go, because the numbers don't lie, right? But that's one of the problems that we uncovered in this whole process is if you're limited on where you can go regionally, then you're kind of screwed. And I hate to say
Yeah.
that, but that's kind of the fact, and that's one of the issues that we wanted to address in this situation, and that's what we're talking about here is that, not picking on East versus West, historically, Eastern region matches are higher hit percentage matches, which means the chances of somebody like a Morgan King coming in and gapping the field by 20 shots is pretty much impossible. So you're more than likely, 40th place is still getting 90% of the leader. If you're chasing points, then you're going to go to that match
If
with
you're
a
chasing
finite
points,
skill
yeah.
set.
Yeah.
If you're chasing points, you want to make it to the finale or whatever, that is your best bet. But that's not financially or physically feasible for a lot of the people in the series. So to your point, trying to grow the sport, how do we then kind of normalize things across the entire U.S. across all the regions? And that was a really, really, really big consideration. I think that's, and you said it a minute ago. How do we normalize it without restricting what match directors can do and asking them to change the way that they're running their matches? Love the way that Paul Dalen runs his match at Nutcrusher. I will be there next year. I love going to shoot that match. It's super challenging, and I really, really enjoy it, just for that fact. But I don't want to penalize him because he runs a super challenging match, and because he's not getting the attendance, now he's striving to just run a meatball match. That's not what I want either.
Yeah. And that's the swing of it, right? Like, and that's happened a couple times in our history where, matches are even advertised as a meatball match, man. So I got mosquitoes in the office with me. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, matches advertised as meatball matches and or like Clay's match this year, right? Where he decided to do 2 extra rounds and stuff like that. Like, that's not the direction we necessarily want to go either. And I'll give you one more example too. We were talking about, guys that are shooting regionally or whatever and may get penalized based on what region they're in. They could be a really good shooter shooting in a really difficult region and never make the finale. Or gentlemen like Miles Neville, right? Joe Thielen from Hornady, that they're both from Nebraska. They shoot the Hornady PRC every year because, that's the business they work for. And they shoot a bunch of matches in Oklahoma. Some are harder than others, but they like shooting the more challenging matches. I think they both came up to Matt's match, right? Matt, you have a little bit more challenging match. I don't know where it landed on Sheldon's spreadsheet, but it's
I think it was
probably
like second to last or third. It was probably third to the hardest match last year.
Right.
It won't end
Right.
up there this year, but
Well, wind conditions and environmentals and stuff like that, right? That, things out of your control. So like, you know, normalizing things for shooters who like to, go to challenging matches. Maybe they should be penalized. They're still going to make the finale by shooting all challenging matches, very, very likely. But going into the finale, they're not going to have points that reflect their skill, right? That was like to Sheldon's point, that one of the things that we were trying to address.
Just as I'm a listener, if I was a listener hearing this, I would be, asking, okay, why don't you just go to a true normalization of every match? And, one thing we looked at that was pretty close, really pure placement is pretty close to normalization when it comes to what you get at a match. But it has holes in it, and it has some negatives. And what we did was we created our models. Our models basically, what it did was it used a control. If you're a scientist, it used a control. The controls of the current scoring system. If you're an engineer, we call it a benchmark. And then we make a change and see how people move up and down the standings. We look at how far they move, how drastic that change in rank is on the season. And then there's a gut check piece of it. Does that make sense? We look at what matches the people that moved. Some people would go up and down 100 ranks in the season standings with a small change. So we look at what match they shot, and then this tail starts to tell itself. But so true normalization is really hard to get to. Pure placement wasn't the answer to it, and it was tried before. I think somebody tried that. Maybe the PRS.
Yeah, I don't recall. I'm sure it did, right? And I guess another thing that we should mention too is like having like if you did a true normalization where the points you earned at a match could actually change long after you shot the match, right? Based on other match performance, like, oh, well, you shot Prentice's match in January and you think you earned 92 points, but by mid-June, because we made all the other matches relative to that one or relative to each other, like, you didn't actually earn 92 points. You earned 87. Like, that's not fair to do either, right? Like, it can't be retroactive. It has to be something you walk away from the match. You know how many points you have, right?
And that was one of the rules, that you could not look back and change the score. When you left the match, your score was what it was. And another one of the rules that ties directly into this was you needed to be able to explain it to somebody in 2 minutes, and they needed to be able to understand how many points they were going to get. And true normalization it's not really, I don't know how to explain that in 2 minutes to most people. So when we talk about hit percentage, current system, it's that aspect of what you truly did that is a factor in your score. And that's the beauty of it. So there's data and statistics from all these different methods, but there is some beauty in having some aspect of how good did you really shoot? And that hit percentage is important to keep in it in some form or fashion.
Maybe we should talk about sort of the second part of our recommendation, and that's the number of matches that would be in a regular season to qualify for the finale.
Yep, let's do that. Why did we look, and what does it do?
I mean, going back to the earlier discussion about 300s, and everybody's got a 300. One of the solutions we looked at was, if you add another match, how many people are going into the finale with a tie? And adding a fourth regular season match really limited the number of ties going into the finale. So that was one element of it, and the other was just that it also dramatically improved sort of the stats around getting the right people to the finale, predicting who's going to do the best at the finale. And so he said, hey, our recommendation is going to be to go to a 4-match season, which immediately everybody goes, oh man, that's a lot of shooting. I don't know if I can make it to the finale with 4 matches. But when we look back at how many people who had been to the finale got that invite on the first 150, only 8 people out of last year's invite list shot 3 matches. Everybody else had shot 4 or more. And actually 3 of those guys who were in that 8 were pros who were shooting other circuits, other stuff, and been to the finale a bunch of times. They just chose to shoot 3 that season.
I think
Mhm.
John Pinch was one of those
Yeah.
8, right?
Yeah.
He
Right. I
shot
mean,
what he needed to get to where he needed to go, and then he's going to go shoot some beautiful animal on some mountain somewhere.
exactly.
And we're all
Yep.
jealous of it. Yeah, and at the same time, it's also important to note too, it's not a minimum qualification. It's not that you have to shoot 4 matches in order to be eligible to get an invite to the PRS finale, right? It's just that your score is based on a maximum of up to 4 matches. If you're one of those 8 people and you only shot 3 matches, but yet you still have, you know, you're within the top 150, you still qualify. That doesn't change. And so the minimum requirement is not an eligibility requirement. I guess that's kind of important to know for those watching that, you know, based on our recommendation of going to a 4-match format, that's not the case.
Now,
I don't
If
want it
if you're
to be
open for an
discouraged.
invite, though, you should probably shoot 4 matches.
yeah,
I'd highly recommend you should probably shoot 8, and I'm sure
that's kind of
Ken
the
would
number.
appreciate that. I think it's a great number. I think it's a great round number, and I think Ken, I'm sure, would agree. But no, it's you know, it does encourage people to go shoot more matches, and I do recommend it. Shooting matches is a lot of fun. If it's not feasible, I don't want people to get discouraged though. It's not a minimum eligibility requirement like some other stuff was, right? AG Cup required you to shoot a minimum of 3 matches, regardless of whether that puts you above or below the threshold to get cut off. Right? You just wouldn't get invited if you did not shoot a minimum of 3 matches, no matter where you fell in the rankings. But that's not the case here. I just think it's important to note.
It's probably one of the most controversial topics of our recommendations is 3 versus 4. What should we do? And is it a growth opportunity for the sport? Will people go shoot an extra match? Most of them, yes. But on the flip side of that, will it deter people from trying to chase the points if they know they have to shoot 4? And yeah, there'll be some of those, but I think at the end of the day, there's probably a higher percentage. And we spent a lot of time talking to other shooters, especially the middle pack guys, to see what they thought. What would they do? I felt the overwhelming answer was we probably should pick up another match somewhere.
Yeah, and that's you can go, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, and so Matt, to your point though, like we were talking about earlier about normalizing the matches across all regions, though, it makes it a lot easier if you're trying to map out the matches that you're going to shoot on a season, and you can only attend so many. You're not worried about going to shoot another match that might actually be local to you, that historically has not been a high percentage scoring match, that now under this new system really isn't that big of a deal. So go to that match, go participate, go shoot the match. It's local to you. It's convenient. And under the new system, because it's normalized, it doesn't matter. The outcome of the match will be very representative of your performance, and you can take those points and go on. So yeah, I think that's an important aspect of it. If guys are trying to look at, guys and girls are trying to look at, what 3 matches are the best ones that I could go shoot? Well, there's probably others convenient as well that I think people could participate in, that they ought to go participate in. We're just opening up. I'm just saying we're making it easier to just shoot matches that are not just statistically to your advantage to go shoot, but are just convenient to shoot. So go shoot more matches.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. How many matches do you have that you could shoot within a 4-hour drive?
Oh, 2. 3.
Really?
3 technically. On the PRS schedule, I have 3 matches within 4 hours.
3 matches in 4 hours.
Both of Prentice's matches and Jake's match in Weatherford. Because he's within 4 hours. Within 6 hours. How about within 6 hours? Okay. So now we're going to open it up because I've got 2 matches that Prentice hosts Jake's match. I've got 2 of them that Watts hosts plus Clay. I'm going to get there about 6 hours. And then I've got the Impact Foundation match, which is within 6 hours. And then I have now 2 of them in Little Rock. I can get to Little Rock in about 6 hours, 6 hours and 15 minutes.
So 9 matches.
9 matches that I can get to within 6 hours. And that's, I think, yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, 9 matches. To your point, right? I mean,
I can get to Matt
lot.
Sabaka. And it'd take me about 6 hours. I can get to Matt's place.
Yeah, Joe Thielen, and we're the closest match to him. He's probably close to 6, 5 maybe.
Yeah. Well, but my point a minute ago is, I mean, let's say you're close to Price, Utah, but
Yeah, no, I
there's a lot
understand
of
that.
there's a lot
Yeah,
of good
yeah.
matches in close proximity. But you're like, well, I don't want to go shoot Paul's match because I mean, it's just statistically, it's a waste of money. I'm not going to get any good points there. So why bother? It would be better to take my money and go try to, I don't know, go further east or go further west and just go find a different match. And again,
Yeah.
I don't want that to sound negative against Paul's match because I love Paul's match. I
Well,
think
it's
it's one of the
statistically,
best
it's
ones
one of
in
the
the
harder
series.
matches. Yeah.
It is. It's just hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll teach you a lot of things about what you're not good at really quickly. You'll
Offhand
be
shooting.
reminded of. Oh, yeah. Well, there's offhand shooting and hell, just if
Which
nothing else, how to run your
yeah.
gear. I mean, it's a phenomenal
Yeah.
match. I love it. I
Yeah.
can't wait to go back. But it is, if you had to pick, like which way do I
Right.
go? Yeah. So anyways.
Along those notes a little bit too, we talk about mulligan matches. We'll call them mulligan matches, and we talked about so you get 4. We talked about it in a couple of different scenarios, but in maybe a simple way to explain it is, hey, you shoot. If you shoot 5 matches, you get a throwaway match. You take your top 4 scores, and maybe there was another tier to it where you shot 9 matches and you could throw away 2 scores or 3 scores or something like that. And that was another way, another thing we looked at. I guess it didn't have a lot of traction, but it was a growth.
That's if you're taking the average, right? Like
that
if
was
your
for the
4th score is the average. Yeah. So
One
you
of the
get top 3 plus a
hypotheticals, but
4th. Yeah. And then drop one. Why was that not considered long term?
when we looked at the average score, we thought it would just get into your head too much. Where like, let's say you started off the season with 4 really good matches, and you're like, oh man, if I shoot a 5th one, I'm going to ruin my average. We didn't want people to carry that and have to think about a whole nother numbers game.
Well, yeah,
it's cleaner to go and shoot your best match and enjoy it.
Look at Jeff Gary. If we did that after his first 5 wins, he wouldn't want to. After his first 3 wins, he wouldn't want to
He
shoot
wouldn't
another
shoot.
match, and that's just not fair.
Right.
Because he's going to do nothing
Right.
but go down. Well, except he keeps winning.
Yeah, we don't ever want to discourage anybody from shooting matches. I mean, shooting
Exactly.
matches is fun. You should shoot more everybody should shoot more matches.
The other big reason we didn't like that was we thought it would actually entice people to choose those easier meatball matches even more. It was going to drive them to a match that they knew they could get a higher average at, and made them less likely to go to Iowa or Clay's or wherever else
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want to drag their season average down. But the
Mhm.
mulligan was a way to counter that because you could throw them away, and it was maybe a way to get them shooting more matches because they could go maybe shoot 1 or 2 matches that they really wanted to shoot because they're fun, like Cameo or something. And
One thing is like the whole sport and organization has grown. I mean, there's more matches to shoot than ever. And I think
There
looking at
is.
the more matches really emphasizes like, the growth that the organization has had.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the difference, go back to 2012 when there was, 10 matches. 2015 there was probably like 16 matches, maybe. And 2025, we ended up with 48. We had one of the Canadian matches actually drop out, but I mean, if we wanted to go to 52 matches for next year, we could. There's that much. There's that many match directors in areas that would be, appetizing for our organization to say, yeah, you can have a match there, but that's something we got to be careful about because and when we set the schedule, we have to be really careful not to just, you want a match, take a match, whatever, because that might penalize, the match directors that have been around forever, that are very loyal to the organization, have done everything they can for the organization and been hosting matches for several years, and then all of a sudden it takes away a bunch of their attendance, right? Now, if there's a match director in Wisconsin wants to host a 2-day Pro Series match, we're going to find room for him because, like me, or Matt, if we can put one here in the Midwest, like we're going to have a lot more shooters that are going to go after this 4-match, score and pursue the finale. So, depending on where matches show up, we could, potentially, have 50 plus match season here, in future years. But as it stands, it seems like all the match directors in Texas on all these ranches, like there's 2 or 3 that we could add there tomorrow, right? And then like Jake Graves would take a second match if I asked him if he wanted one, he would take it in a heartbeat.
And it would fill up. It would fill up.
fill up.
And
Yep.
it would fill up. And he would have a full match. It would be a great match, and it would be full. You're right.
It would, and then and maybe it, like Twisted Barrel would have a few less shooters at it,
You're right.
know, and
You're right.
JK's match would maybe have a shooter or 2 less, and Justin Watts, these outlying match directors, because again, it all comes down to time and money, and the shooting community only has so much time and money. But if we add more shooters to that community, now now we can have more matches. So that's something we're constantly looking at, right? Like, what was match attendance? What has it been in prior years? Is it going in the right direction? What's the membership look like in that region? Is it growing? Statistically and data speaking, what does this look like? Right? We're constantly looking at that stuff.
No, that's a good point, because when you think about it, like using Jake's range as an example, just from a business aspect, I have Navasota, where Prentice hosts his matches, are about an hour and 15 minutes from where I live. If that range was 3 or 4 hours from where I live, I don't know that I would have ever gotten into the sport. It was kind of almost just because somebody twisted my arm and made me go to a competition, or just a monthly match. If it was 4 hours away, I wouldn't have gone. If it's close, it's in close proximity. And to your point, if it's easy to get to, yeah, the minute I went to a match, I was hooked. I swallowed the hook. I swallowed the hook. It was not coming out. I mean, it was done. I was done. But to that point, if you find a way to increase more matches across country and you do that, yeah, absolutely. So, but now back into to this conversation about scoring and everything else. Now we increase matches, we increase the number of shooters. And I think something that is worth noting is that the level of competition within the sport has also grown significantly. I mean, I've only been in there for a while, 5 years? But I can tell you that it is a lot harder now to finish on the podium than it was 5 years, in my opinion, 5 years ago. The level of competition and the room for error is so small now that it's very, very different. And my point in that is, in our conversations as a scoring committee, how do you compensate for that? How do you compensate for, a sport that's continued to evolve, and assuming it's going to continue to evolve and become even more competitive? I mean, I know we're talking about the match from this last weekend at Alabama. I know I won by a few shots, but behind me, I mean, there was ties for second, ties for third, fourth. I mean,
pretty good.
Extremely tight. There was no room for error. No room for all for error. So how do we capture that from a scoring committee was, part of our discussion. Some part of our consideration. So assume the sport's only going to continue to be even more hyper competitive in the future.
That's a great point, Chris. I mean, part of the whole meatball match issue isn't really that the match directors have started putting out bigger and bigger targets. It's just that so many people are getting better and better and are hitting more targets.
That's right. The match that Bushman cleaned, right? It's infamous. Everybody knows about it. We all talk about it. Back in 2012, nobody would have cleaned that match.
No,
wouldn't have even been a consideration. I mean, let's be fair.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking down about the people that were participating in the sport back then.
The gear was so much different.
The gear was different, right? The guns are different. The barrels are different. I mean, there's so much more knowledge.
Bullets are better. Like, everything's better.
Everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the recipe for success. The amount of knowledge and the recipe for success has gotten to be kind of so well known in the sport these days that I don't want to say it's not hard. That sounds arrogant, but
Since the guy finally got a second win 5 years later.
Easy. We'll talk about it.
And then he says it's easy.
Well, it's true.
So
it's true.
easy.
I didn't want to win, because winning is easy. Getting really, really close to winning and not doing it is what's the real challenge. But no, all kidding aside. But no, there's a lot. There was a new shooter that borrowed one of my rifles at a regional match recently, and he was like, oh my gosh, he was using a loaner rifle the whole day. He used my rifle and he went up and almost cleaned the stage for the first time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that it was my gun. It was just the gun set up well. It's running good. It's accurate. it's shooting really well. I give him a little bit of information, and next thing you know, this guy's off and running. He just got fourth at a regional match this last weekend, and it's like his fourth match. The information, the
Yeah.
learning curve is extremely steep, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and it's getting to be very, very competitive. That's my point. So how do we address that as a committee to come up with a recommendation for scoring that keeps up with how fast the sport is evolving? I guess that's my point. That's part of the challenge.
I'll make a statement there that and this is one of the reasons that, Matt and I really, we had a serious conversation about this, as the, owner and director of this thing, I'm going to listen to that, right? Like the sport's going to change. Things are going to happen that, may need to change, and I'm going to consider it. Like, I think it's foolish not to, to think that the way that it's always been is the best way, going forward, when, the population of shooters from 10 years ago and the match, difficulty, all of that was different 10 years ago. Like, the sport has changed quite a bit in 10 years. So, and we're still going to follow the process. We're going to publish a bunch of information. We're going to give all the reasons why. We're going to be transparent, and then, we'll get it out there and see how the match director committee feels about it, right? But, we did our diligence, and we're going to keep talking about it, right? And hopefully everybody gives this a shot, right? Like, and that's the other thing that I'll say as an organization. Like, I'm not afraid to try something, and if we find out that in practice it doesn't work, that's okay. Like, we're not failing, it's just, that didn't work. The failure is to not do something about it again, right? Like, and to change. So, and that's, that's how I've always, I came from an engineering background, and, typically maybe a little more conservative background, but like, not trying something for the sake of, not wanting to change, like, it's not acceptable. Like, I want to move the needle. I want us to grow. I want the organization to be successful. Like, we're going to consider change everywhere, So.
That was your point there is a huge piece of consideration, because if you look at scoring systems and the, I don't know, 10 to 15 that we really looked at in different scenarios, each one, may shine better. And is 50-50 hybrid the best solution across the board in every scenario? I think the answer is probably no, but it's also a safe exam. It's a step in the right direction. It's a good change, but it's a small change. It's not going to break the sport. You're not going to some crazy weighted system that's got holes. It's a really good, confident change, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's something we can try.
It's something we can try. It was Sheldon's help though too. I mean, and I've got to give it a lot of credit to Sheldon and his ability to crunch all the statistics and the numbers and everything else. We ran the scenarios. We have the data. We know how previous years would have ended up if we adopted this. And I think it was important, right? It's important to note that in every scenario, we did not pick one that would have changed the outcome of the season for who won the series, right? That was very important, that we don't go in and mathematically change how the outcome of the season would have come, but consider how the season would have changed, right? And how that would have affected, because we have the data for those to compare and to look at that, and then look at that in retrospect and say, does that look right? Does changing the outcome of the season look right to us with what we know now? Because it's always easier to go back, right? I mean, hindsight's 20/20 in every scenario. So having that data with Sheldon's help to go back and look at it was extremely helpful, right?
You can't dwell on any one person, because maybe they had a bad stage and that one match is a little worse than it should have been, or this happened, or their trigger went out rusty, something like that really changed their outcome and isn't the most true reflection. But one of the most eye-opening things about this process is we created this really diverse group of people from all across the U.S. We had these top-level shooters, mid-pack shooters. We had people in all different circles, and we looked at a lot of different things. And the message I'm trying to give to the match directors is, we voted on this independently, and the guys that sat there and saw the data, they saw, they were part of every conversation. They saw the pros and cons of every aspect. It was a unanimous vote. It wasn't. I mean, that's the power in that was pretty significant. If sit down and look at everything, and everybody turns around and says, "Well, yeah, that's probably the best option." Uh, it doesn't happen by accident.
Right. All right. Let's talk about. And I'm looking at the executive summary. One of the things I wanted to mention, and then I want to go into the additional notes. What does it take to qualify for the finale? So we put a chart in that executive summary that calls out first place, 10th place, 25th, and 200. First place, you need average match score right now. You need 100. The average match score in this new system going forward is going to be 100. Right? It's 4-match hybrid. 10th place, current score would be 298.95. That's an average score of 99.65. Under the 4-match hybrid system, it goes from 99.65 to 98.92. So you have a little bit of separation opening there, right? For 25th place, currently the average match score would be 97.43. Under the 4-match hybrid system, it's 96.24. So it's opening up a little bit more, where it really opens up between 25th and 200. The average match score for ranked 200th is 86.11 with 3 matches, and it goes to 77.96. So that there's a huge separation that starts to happen once you get out of the top 25, right? And then trying to earn points, like now to make the finale, 77 points gets you in, right? But probably 80, right? Versus 88 now, right? So I mean that's a significant less number of points, but it's relative too, right? Which maybe you guys want to talk about the relativity of this too, right? Like if just because you're shooting maybe less difficult matches or matches where more people are earning higher points, doesn't necessarily mean earning less points there doesn't necessarily mean like we're taking points away or the system's taking points away from you. It's all relative, right?
Yeah, no, kid, that's a really good point too. We talked about that as well. When you bring in the hybrid 50-50 scoring, scores that people acquire at a match are inevitably going to drop slightly, and that's
matches.
Almost a big. Well, I mean, almost
some matches.
Some matches, yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of a curve, and I don't want to say that as a discouragement. We're just kind of renormalizing the way that the scoring curve kind of works in a match. It's across the board. So if a shooter goes into a match and expects to get 90% because they finish 50th in the match, and now they go to the exact same match, they finish 50th in the match, they're exact same place for the winner as they were the previous season, but now they get 80% instead of 90%. Well,
they get 83
so
instead of 90 points. Yeah.
So does everyone else in your position too. So it's all relative, I guess is kind of my point. And so the way that the numbers work here and the numbers that you're pointing out, it does shift all the numbers a little bit. I guess I wouldn't want shooters to get discouraged if they go to the exact same match, finish the exact same way, and they get less points. That's not a bad thing. It's not. We're just bringing in placement into consideration, and that's going to affect the numbers a little bit. Doesn't mean they have less of a chance to go to the finale or qualify.
Hard to separate the top without separating the bottom as well, and that just amplifies all the way down. But at the end of the day,
that's a good point.
It should give the guy in 200th at the end of the year. There's a lot more for him to gain. There's a lot better metric for him to measure his growth year to year, and as he climbs up, that's arguably a more true reflection of their position relative to your Austin or Gaines of the world. Are you in the current system? You're an 86 point average. You're 13 points, 14 points away from Austin or Gain. Is that more accurate than, a 78 point average being 22 points away. So that's not an easy pill for most people to swallow. But at the end of the day, uh, you can't separate the top without separating the bottom very easily.
Well, middle. I mean, it just, it separates it all.
Yeah, the
But
middle. Yeah.
yeah,
But it's a more accurate representation of exactly where everybody stands.
Right.
So again, I think we're all, at the end of the day, I think, and again, this was something that we very heavily, considered. We're all competing against our peers, right? Regardless of whether you're in the top 10, you're at 150th, you're 25th, whatever, we're all competing against our peers. What we want is for everybody to be able to compete accurately against their peers in a more representative stance. And that was kind of the point here. So I guess my point, and Ken, you brought up the chart, and I'm kind of looking at it now. That was something that we considered. There's going to be a little bit of a shift in the points that people typically get from a match. It's going to take a little bit of adjustment, assuming we adopt this method, but it's just important that everybody realizes it's all relative. There's an entire shift. It'll be slightly different for everybody. If you're used to getting 95% at a match, finishing somewhere in the top 5, top 10, it's going to be slightly less than that, but it's relative. So is everybody else.
Just a new yardstick.
There you go.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
Sheldon, you're exactly right. It's a new yardstick. That's all. But it's still the same. Yeah. It's all the same.
I want to talk about the additional notes that were in the executive summary. So divisions, production, tactical, gas, sportsman. We chose not to touch those, right? So if you're shooting those, and for those people that don't know, when you shoot, take sportsman. I love shooting sportsman. It's incredibly challenging. If you shoot sportsman division, you are earning open points. Now you're really challenged at earning those open points, but when you earn your sportsman points, it's based off of the winner of that division, which is 100. And we don't take placement into any consideration for those divisions. So if Sheldon and I are shooting sportsman division, I win that division. I have 90 impacts on the weekend, and Sheldon has 89. It's 89 divided by 90, and that's the way our score is done. It's not this. It's not placement dependent as well.
Main reason for that being in attendance, the amount of shooters in each of those.
Right.
Well, since it's so low, it was better not to change that.
Yeah. Every match has, is 85% open shooters, right? And the 15% are divisional guys, right? TAC and gas. And that's not a real number. I'm just, maybe it's 20%, but it's not 50% are divisional shooters, right? Regional and rimfire series scoring remains unchanged. So this doesn't get super complicated on the website and all that. What other reasons behind leaving that the same?
The rimfire is a whole different animal, and I don't shoot rimfire, and seems like they have a billion matches, and I just let them do their thing. That's
crazy. There are, I mean, it would make things really complicated. For those that aren't familiar with the rimfire series, and maybe you're interested in chasing that, like you come up through your region, and then we take the top shooters out of the region, and based on their national standings and their regional performance, they go compete at the finale. So it's not a part of their own series, or it's not like a pro series and then that's the champion. It all comes from regional performance, which there are 600 matches in 2025, 600 rimfire matches. So every weekend there's Saturday, Sunday, you can compete all over the country. The next point was finale retains 2x weight. We've talked about that. Qualifier system. So currently we have 13, 14 qualifiers that are mixed into the Pro Series. You have to have one of your top scores, your 3 scores of today. It has to be a qualifier to get to the finale. The purpose of the qualifiers initially was to and it's why it's limited in scope of how many matches we have, is to drive more of the top shooters to go to those qualifying matches, right? So then if you guys that want to compete at the finale, you got to go shoot a qualifier. Those qualifying matches are typically going to have, it's going to be a little bit more stacked field. Well, what that should also do is create some more separation, right? So I think the qualifier system kind of works hand in hand with doing a 50-50 hybrid and having placement be, a consideration. Yep. And one qualifier required. We're not saying more than one or whatever. Yep. Classifications. We're gonna, so a lot of shooters and everybody's a little bit different, wants to compete for different reasons, but there is, there's a large part of our population that is looking for that classification. They want to shoot their 3 matches in a season, and then get classified, right? And then you get classified either AM, marksman, semi-pro, or pro. And then once you're in that classification, you get to compete all next year as that classification. So if you classified marksman, now you're competing when you go to a Pro Series match. There is a marksman trophy at the end of that match that you're competing for, right? And then at the end of the year, there's cash prize. We pay out and give a trophy, just like one of these bullet trophies back here, to the top of each classification. So like that's another another pathway for people to compete, right? And there's invites based on those classifications too. We take the top 10, top 12 out of each class, right? All get invites. Now, a lot of those guys do earn their invites elsewhere. They're in the top 150 as well. So, but that remains the same. It's going to be the top 3 scores that you had from the last year. We put, take everybody's top 3 and rank everybody, and then basically take top 20%. Those are anybody in that top 20% is going to be labeled pro, semi-pro in the next 25, and so on and so forth down the way. And then the last thing that we have on this executive summary, match director committee voting options. Option 1, no change, right? And we just, if the committee decides not to do it. Option 2, adopt a 50-50 hybrid scoring system. So it would remain 3 matches, best 3 with 50-50. And then option 3 would be adopt 4-match 50-50 hybrid scoring system, which is the recommendation from the committee here. You guys have any other comments or closing remarks or anything on the way out? Rusty, thanks for joining us. I know, like, you're in the middle of an adventure, and this doesn't always happen at the most convenient time, but we appreciate having you too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the message to the match directors is don't jump to conclusions. If you think that was one of the things that was eye-opening throughout this process when we looked at different scoring systems is, if we go to that, it's going to do this, and this guy's going to get more points, this guy's going to get less. When you actually look at what it does, the effect is different. So before you jump to a conclusion and stand on your pedestal and shout that this is a bad thing to change, I don't know, seek to understand some more, reach out to somebody on the committee, myself, or anyone really. We're all knowledgeable on it. So I guess be open.
Matt, I think that's a good point. I've had some conversations with, I've spoken to Prentice. Obviously, I see him at the range all the time where I go train. We've had some conversation about it. Prentice has been in the sport for a long time. He was aware of when, I think this was attempted before and whatnot. And I'm pretty open with him about, my thoughts on, how to improve things, how to improve the sport and whatnot. So we have some pretty candid conversations. But yeah, no, I would encourage anybody that has questions about how we came up to the conclusions that we did. Can you kind of went through the additional notes pretty quickly in the executive summary with regards to divisions, the regional stuff, the finale, all that stuff. I don't want anybody to think that we glossed over a lot of those details without putting a lot of hard data behind it. Just in the divisions alone, I know that I kind of put forth some calculations as to how we might consider changing those. And again, as a group, as an entire group, including, Matt Steiner, who shoots TAC division, we took the input. We considered what the outcome might be, how that might change guys and how they might pursue stuff like that. So none of this stuff was taken very lightly at all. I guess I would just, that's in my closing, that's what I would say. if you have questions about it, reach out to any one of us in the deal. And then, yeah, I look forward to hopefully seeing something, at least try something out.
I think my takeaway from the whole process was just, the committee was a group of guys who deeply loved the sport and really wanted the absolute best for it. I mean, they love competing, they love, the matches they go to. And so it came from a place not of any agenda, but just wanting to make everything better. So that was really cool to see.
Sure. That's a good point.
Dusty.
Guys, I have to apologize. I'm like Ken said, I'm right in the middle of a 4-H week. We're having to take all of our animals, and this was perfect timing for me. So I've been driving around, dropping animals off, and anyway. But
Yeah.
this I really appreciate being part of this committee. We did put a lot of time and effort and studying into it, and I really think we came up with a fair solution, and I hope it's adopted. I think it'll be a better way to proceed. And anyway, sorry I've been kind of distracted during this whole meeting. I feel bad about that.
No, that's all good, man. I mean, when we had to get the work done, you were a part of all that, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Rusty's been a rock
Well,
for us along the way.
I
He's
enjoy it.
he is an experienced shooter, though.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So this is going to go out on YouTube. There's obviously a comment section and a like section and all that there. I think it's a great spot for folks to comment on this. Also, it'll be posted on Facebook when this goes live. Facebook, Instagram. We take a look at that. I hope everybody enjoyed what we talked about. Hopefully there's some good conversations regarding this and how do we want to move forward. And hopefully we get some encouragement from the community as well. There's a lot of work done here and it would be cool to see team rewarded by seeing some change and what's going on. Talk to your local match directors, especially if if this is something you're really passionate about, but you don't think that that match director, may or may not, have a lot of skin in the game or buy in or whatever, like talk to them about it, right? Because they're going to have a vote in this. So please just have a conversation. And if you don't understand something, like Chris said, like, you can reach out. If we see comments on the social media that, that need responding or whatever, I'm probably going to cue some of these gentlemen in and say like, hey, I don't know if you saw this, but let's talk about it, right? And have hopefully a respectful conversation. So anyways, I appreciate you guys coming on tonight. I appreciate the rest of the team that unfortunately couldn't be all here tonight, but we had a great conversation. Look at the blog post for this and you'll see the executive summary and maybe some other notes that we publish there. So with that, good night.
Thank you.
Night.